Emily Carter stared at the stack of overdue bills on the kitchen counter until the numbers blurred together. Electricity, rent, past due daycare fees. A final notice from the pediatric clinic she had been pretending not to see for almost 2 weeks. The cheap coffee beside her had gone cold an hour ago, but she still wrapped both hands around the chipped mug because the warmth helped steady the shaking in her fingers. The apartment smelled faintly of detergent, instant noodles, and the lavender baby shampoo she used for Lily because it was the only thing that helped her daughter sleep through thunderstorms. Outside the thin apartment walls, someone argued loudly in Spanish. A baby cried somewhere down the hallway. Pipes rattled every time another tenant turned on hot water. Emily closed her eyes. She was so tired. Not ordinary tired. The kind of tired that lived inside bones. The kind that made simple decisions feel impossible. Her 6-year-old daughter sat cross-legged on the faded living room rug, carefully coloring a picture of a horse with crayons worn down to stubs. "Mommy." Emily looked up immediately. "Yes, sweetheart. Can I use the pink one now?" Emily swallowed. The pink crayon had snapped in half last week. "Of course." Lily smiled and went back to coloring, unaware of how carefully her mother watched every tiny thing lately. Every cough, every fever, every skipped meal. Because emergencies were expensive, and poor people learned quickly that getting sick could destroy everything. Emily rubbed at the ache behind her eyes. 3 months earlier, the diner where she worked mornings had cut employee hours after a corporate restructuring. 2 weeks after that, the small accounting office where she worked evenings outsourced half its staff. She had survived both blows by taking overnight inventory shifts at a grocery warehouse, which meant she now slept in fragments. 2 hours here, 90 minutes there. Sometimes sitting upright on the bus, sometimes with Lily curled against her chest because her daughter had started waking from nightmares after the divorce. Divorce. Even thinking the word still made Emily feel hollow. Jason had left 18 months ago, after quietly draining their savings account. Not because he hated her. That would have been easier. He had simply grown tired of struggling, tired of bills, tired of responsibility, tired of being needed. The affair with a pharmaceutical sales representative had apparently offered a cleaner life. He now lived in Arizona. He sent child support only when the court threatened wage garnishment. Lily asked about him less often now. That somehow hurt worse. Emily reached for her phone. The cracked screen lit up with another payment reminder. Past due. Her chest tightened. The pediatric clinic had already warned her they might delay Lily's asthma medication refill if the balance continued growing. She looked toward her daughter again. Lily was humming softly to herself. Emily opened her contacts. Her thumb hovered over the number she thought belonged to the local emergency assistance coordinator. She had written the number hurriedly on a diner napkin 3 days earlier. She typed slowly. "I'm sorry to bother you. My daughter's medication refill is due tomorrow, and I'm short this week. I can repay anything after Friday. I just need enough to get through until payday." She stared at the message. Humiliation crawled up her throat. At 32 years old, she was begging strangers for help, for medicine, for groceries, for another week of survival. Her finger trembled before she pressed send. Immediately, she regretted it. Emily set the phone face down and pressed both palms against her eyes. The silence lasted less than 30 seconds. Her phone buzzed, then buzzed again. Emily frowned and picked it up. A bank notification filled the screen. Transfer received. Her breath caught. The amount made her stomach drop. It wasn't a few $100s. It was enough to cover rent, utilities, medication, groceries, nearly 2 months of survival. Below the transfer was a single message. "Wait for me." Emily stared at the words. Her pulse started hammering. She scrolled upward frantically. Then her blood ran cold. The number. She had typed 1 digit wrong. This wasn't the community assistance coordinator. The transfer details displayed a name she recognized instantly. Nathan Reynolds, CEO of Reynolds Dynamics, one of the largest technology and infrastructure companies in the country. The kind of man who appeared on magazine covers beside headlines about billion-dollar acquisitions. The kind of man who existed in glass towers and private jets, not in apartments with peeling paint and broken heating vents. Emily's stomach twisted. "Mommy." She looked up too quickly. Lily frowned. "Are you okay?" Emily forced a smile that felt fragile. "Yeah, baby." But she wasn't. Because suddenly a stranger with unimaginable power knew she existed. And somehow that felt more terrifying than being invisible. She typed quickly. I'm sorry. This message wasn't meant for you. There must be some mistake. I can return the money. 3 dots appeared immediately. You needed help. Emily swallowed. That isn't your responsibility. Another pause. Then, maybe not. But I know what desperation sounds like. Emily stared at the sentence. Something about it unsettled her. Not because it sounded manipulative. Because it sounded true. Her phone buzzed again. Can we meet tomorrow? Fear prickled down her spine. Every warning women learned from childhood rose instantly inside her. Don't trust strangers. Don't accept help. Nothing comes free. Especially from wealthy men. Especially from powerful men. Emily looked toward Lily again. Her daughter had begun coughing softly. That small dry cough that always worsened at night. Emily closed her eyes. She hated that survival forced people into impossible calculations. Pride. Safety. Need. Exhaustion. Everything became negotiable when your child needed medicine. Public places only, she finally typed. Nathan replied almost immediately. Of course. Then another message appeared. I'll explain everything tomorrow. 5th Street Coffee. 2:30. Emily read the message 3 times. Her chest felt tight. She didn't know why a billionaire CEO cared. She didn't know why his words unsettled her. And she definitely didn't understand why the sentence "wait for me" kept replaying in her head long after she put the phone down. The next morning began with Lily wheezing. Emily woke before dawn to the sound. Instant panic flooded her system. She crossed the apartment barefoot, grabbing the rescue inhaler from the kitchen counter. Slow breaths, baby. Lily nodded sleepily. Emily crouched beside the bed, counting carefully while her daughter inhaled medication. 1, 2, 3. The wheezing eased slightly. Emily exhaled shakily. She sat beside Lily until sunrise, one hand resting against her daughter's back. The fear never fully left. Asthma attacks had become Emily's private nightmare after the emergency room visit last winter. She still remembered fluorescent hospital lights, paperwork she couldn't afford, the humiliation of discussing payment plans while Lily struggled to breathe behind a curtain. People talked about poverty like it was only numbers. It wasn't. It was terror. Constant low-level terror. By noon, Lily seemed stable enough for school. Emily hated sending her. But missing another shift at the diner could cost her job. Again, everything balanced on thin ice now. After dropping Lily off, Emily spent 6 hours carrying plates, apologizing to irritated customers, and pretending her feet didn't ache. Grease clung to her uniform. Coffee stains marked one sleeve. Her manager pulled her aside near the end of the shift. You've been distracted lately. Emily forced herself not to tense. I know. I'm sorry. We can't keep covering late arrivals. Shame burned hot under her skin. She wanted to explain daycare delays, bus schedules, hospital calls, lack of sleep, but exhaustion had taught her something important. Most people stopped listening after the first sentence. It won't happen again, she said quietly. The manager sighed. Just handle it, Emily. Handle it. As if survival were a simple administrative task. At 2:15, Emily stood outside 5th Street Coffee, clutching her worn purse. The cold wind cut through her thrift store coat. Inside the cafe, students typed on laptops while soft jazz drifted from overhead speakers. Normal life. People with enough money to sit peacefully drinking $6 coffee. Emily suddenly became painfully aware of herself. The fraying cuff on her sleeve. The exhaustion beneath her makeup. The cracked heel of one boot. She almost turned around. Then Lily's inhaler flashed. Through her mind, Emily stepped inside. She chose a table near the window where other people remained visible. Her pulse thudded loudly. At exactly 2:30, the cafe door opened. Nathan Reynolds entered quietly. No entourage. No dramatic entrance. Just a tall man in a charcoal coat carrying the kind of contained stillness that made people instinctively move aside without understanding why. He looked older than magazine photos. More tired. Silver threaded through dark hair at his temples. There was something restrained about him. Controlled. Like a man permanently holding tension beneath his skin. His eyes found hers immediately. Emily's stomach tightened. He approached slowly. Emily. His voice was lower than she expected. Careful. She nodded. Nathan Reynolds. As if she didn't already know. He sat across from her after a brief hesitation. Neither spoke for several seconds. The awkwardness felt painfully human. Not cinematic. Not magical. Just two strangers sitting across from each other carrying entirely different kinds of exhaustion. Finally, Emily cleared her throat. You shouldn't have sent that money. Nathan studied her quietly. Would it have helped if I hadn't? The question irritated her immediately. That's not the point. Then what is? Emily looked away. Because the real answer embarrassed her. The point was dignity. The point was how quickly survival stripped it away. I don't know you, she said. Nathan nodded once. Fair concern. A waitress arrived. Emily ordered the cheapest coffee on the menu. Nathan noticed. She hated that he noticed. After the waitress left, silence settled again. Finally, Nathan spoke. My assistant thinks I'm having lunch with a consultant. Emily frowned slightly. Why would you lie about this? Something flickered briefly across his face. Because people like me aren't supposed to stop for things like wrong numbers. People like me. The phrase landed strangely. Not arrogant. Almost bitter. Nathan rested his hands loosely against the table. I know this situation feels strange. That's one word for it. A faint almost smile touched his mouth. It disappeared quickly. You sounded desperate, he said. And I recognized it. Emily crossed her arms instinctively. You don't know anything about my life. No, Nathan agreed softly. I probably don't. That answer surprised her. Most wealthy men she had encountered assumed understanding came naturally to them. Nathan didn't. He simply looked tired. Deeply tired. The waitress returned with coffee. Emily wrapped her hands around the cup. Warmth seeped into stiff fingers. Nathan watched her for a moment before speaking again. Your daughter has asthma? Emily stiffened. How do you know that? You mentioned medication. Children's respiratory prescriptions are expensive. He paused. My younger brother had severe asthma growing up. Something changed subtly inside her. Not trust, but the beginning of complexity. Nathan continued quietly. My mother used to choose between inhalers and groceries sometimes. Emily blinked. That didn't fit the image she carried of men like him. He noticed her expression. I wasn't born rich, Emily. That doesn't mean you understand this. Nathan nodded slowly. You're right. It probably doesn't anymore. The honesty unsettled her more than defensiveness would have. She looked down at her coffee. Why are you really here? Nathan's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. For the first time since arriving, he seemed uncertain. Because 6 years ago my company bought the logistics firm where my brother worked. Emily frowned. Nathan looked toward the window. We cut costs. Overnight shifts increased. Safety protocols changed. His voice remained calm, but his hands tightened slightly. He fell asleep driving home after a double shift. Emily's breath caught. Nathan continued staring outside. He died 3 days later. The noise inside the cafe seemed distant suddenly. Nathan finally looked back at her. So when I read a message from a woman working herself into the ground, trying to keep her child healthy. He stopped. Emily felt something painful move through her chest. Not pity. Recognition. Because grief recognized grief. You think helping me fixes something, she said quietly. Nathan didn't answer immediately. No, he said at last. I think maybe I got tired of pretending systems like mine don't destroy people. The words settled heavily between them. For the first time, Emily believed him. Not because he sounded noble, because he sounded guilty. The second meeting happened 3 days later. Not because Emily trusted him, because life gave her very little room to refuse complicated things. Lily's school called that morning. Fever. Persistent coughing. Emily left work early to pick her up. Her manager's expression alone told her another warning had been added silently to her file. By evening, Lily lay curled on the couch beneath blankets while cartoons played softly. Emily sat nearby calculating bills again. Always calculating. If she delayed utilities another week, she could refill medication. If she skipped laundry, maybe groceries stretched farther. If the fever worsened, her phone buzzed. Nathan, how is your daughter? Emily stared at the message. No man had asked that in a long time. Even Jason rarely remembered details unless reminded. She typed carefully. Fever. I'm monitoring it. Several minutes passed. Then, there's a pediatric urgent care on Madison. They're usually less crowded than County General. Emily frowned. How would you know that? My niece spent 2 winters there. Another pause. Then, you don't have to answer this, but do you have insurance? Emily almost ignored the question. Instead, she answered honestly. Barely. Nathan didn't respond for a full minute. When he finally did, the message felt strangely restrained. That shouldn't happen to people working 3 jobs. Emily stared at the screen. The simple sentence hit harder than sympathy would have. Because most people normalize suffering. Nathan sounded angry about it. At 8 that evening, Lily's fever spiked. By 9, her breathing worsened. Emily tried not to panic. She failed. The urgent care waiting room smelled like antiseptic and exhaustion. Children cried. A television mounted near the ceiling played muted news. Fluorescent lights made everyone look sick even before treatment. Emily filled out paperwork while Lily leaned heavily against her shoulder. The receptionist glanced at the insurance card, then at the outstanding balance. Emily saw the shift instantly. People treated. Debt like character evidence. "We'll do what we can tonight," the receptionist said. What we can. Emily hated phrases like that. They always meant limits. An hour later, Lily finally received a breathing treatment. Emily sat beside the bed rubbing her daughter's small hand while exhaustion pressed against her like physical weight. Her phone vibrated. "Nathan, everything okay?" She almost didn't answer. Then she looked at Lily beneath harsh hospital lighting. "Urgent care." That was all she typed. Nathan replied immediately. "Which one?" Emily frowned. "Why?" No answer came for several minutes. Then, because nobody should sit alone in those places, Emily stared at the message. Before she could respond, footsteps approached. She looked up. Nathan stood near the doorway in dark slacks and a gray coat, slightly damp from rain. Emily's pulse jumped. "You came here." Nathan glanced toward Lily first. Only after confirming the child appeared stable did he answer. "You sounded frightened." The simplicity of it disarmed her. Emily stood abruptly. "You can't just show up at hospitals." Nathan lowered his voice immediately. "You're right. I'm sorry." She blinked. Again, no defensiveness. No billionaire entitlement. Just apology. Nathan remained near the door, giving space. "I brought food," he said awkwardly, lifting a paper bag slightly. Hospital vending machines are criminal. Against her will, Emily almost laughed. The tension cracked briefly. Lily stirred weakly. Her eyes opened. "Mommy." Emily moved instantly beside her. "I'm here, baby." Lily noticed Nathan standing nearby. Children always observed more than adults expected. "Who's that?" Emily hesitated. Nathan answered first. "A friend helping your mom tonight." Friend. The word felt premature, but Lily smiled faintly. "Hi." Nathan's expression softened almost painfully. "Hi, Lily." Emily watched him carefully. Men often performed kindness around children. Nathan didn't. He looked almost uncomfortable, as if hospitals carried memories he preferred avoiding. Eventually, Lily fell asleep again. Nathan set the food quietly on a nearby table. Soup, crackers, tea, practical things. Emily suddenly realized how hungry she was. "You didn't need to do this," she whispered. Nathan looked at Lily. "I know." Rain tapped softly against the windows. Hospital machines beeped steadily nearby. For several minutes, neither spoke. Then Emily asked quietly, "What happened to your brother?" Nathan leaned back slightly in the chair. The exhaustion returned to his face. His name was Caleb. He stared at his hands. He was 26. Worked distribution management after high school because college wasn't affordable. Emily listened silently. When Reynolds Dynamics acquired the company, productivity targets increased. Nathan swallowed once. He stopped sleeping. His voice remained controlled. That somehow made the grief worse. The night he died, he'd been awake almost 20 hours. Emily closed her eyes briefly, because she knew that exhaustion. Knew how people became dangerous to themselves simply trying to survive. Nathan continued quietly. "I signed the restructuring paperwork personally." The confession settled heavily between them. Emily looked at him carefully. "So helping people now is penance?" Nathan accepted the blow without flinching. Maybe partially. At least he was honest. Emily respected honesty more than redemption. Hospitals stripped people down to truth eventually. Around midnight, Lily's breathing stabilized enough for discharge. Emily gathered paperwork while mentally calculating costs again. Nathan noticed. "Don't," he said quietly. Emily stiffened. "Don't what?" "Look at the bill like it's going to decide whether your daughter deserves treatment." Emotion tightened unexpectedly in her throat, because that was exactly what she had been thinking. Nathan reached for his coat. "I'll drive you home. I can take the bus." He glanced toward the sleeping child in her arms. Rain hammered harder outside. Emily looked away first. 20 minutes later, silence filled the car while city lights streaked across wet streets. Lily slept curled against Emily's chest. Nathan drove carefully. No music. No unnecessary conversation. When they reached the apartment building, Nathan looked at the peeling exterior for a long moment. Not judgmentally, thoughtfully. Emily hated that too. Because pity she could reject. Thoughtfulness felt more dangerous. Before leaving, Nathan said quietly, "You shouldn't have to survive like this alone." Emily tightened her grip on Lily. "Most people do." Nathan looked at her, and for the first time she saw anger crack through his restraint. That doesn't make it acceptable. Over the next 2 weeks, Nathan became an increasingly complicated presence in Emily's life. Not constantly, not intrusively, almost carefully. He sent information about childcare assistance programs, connected her with an employment contact for part-time bookkeeping work that could be done remotely. Once, after learning Lily loved astronomy, he mailed a second-hand children's telescope with no note attached. Emily nearly returned it. Then she saw Lily's face when they carried it onto the apartment roof. The child laughed for the first time in weeks. Emily cried quietly afterward in the bathroom, where Lily couldn't hear. Because kindness became dangerous when you were lonely enough to need it. One Friday evening, Nathan visited the diner unexpectedly. Emily nearly dropped an entire tray. He noticed immediately. "Bad idea?" he asked quietly. "Very." Several waitresses were already staring. Nathan looked distinctly out of place among flickering neon signs and sticky booths. Still, he slid into a corner table without complaint. Emily approached cautiously during break. "What are you doing here?" "Eating dinner." She glared. Nathan's mouth twitched faintly. "And checking whether you actually take breaks." Emily crossed her arms. "You don't get to monitor me." "Fair." Again with the calm acceptance. It made arguments difficult. Nathan glanced around the diner quietly. Families. Truck drivers. A tired waitress rubbing swollen ankles near the kitchen. "My mother worked places like this," he said. Emily sat slowly across from him during her 15-minute break. "You talk about her in past tense carefully," she observed. Nathan looked surprised, then almost impressed. "She died 4 years ago." Emily nodded slightly. "Cancer. Heart failure." His expression tightened. Years of stress didn't help. Silence settled. Then Nathan asked quietly, "What happened?" "To Lily's father." Emily laughed once. Not happily. He got tired. Nathan waited. She appreciated that. Most people rushed to fill silence. "Jason hated struggling." Emily continued. "Hated debt. Hated responsibility. Eventually he started treating us like proof he'd failed at life." Nathan's jaw shifted subtly. "And then he left." She shrugged tightly. "Some people disappear emotionally long before physically." Nathan looked down briefly. The reaction felt personal somehow. Emily noticed. "You've done that to people too," she said quietly. Nathan didn't deny it. "Yes." The honesty startled her again. "My marriage ended because work became easier than being emotionally present," he admitted. Emily blinked. She had never seen public interviews mention a marriage. Nathan stared at untouched coffee. "My ex-wife once told me I treated grief like a scheduling conflict." Emily studied him. Was she wrong? Nathan gave a humorless smile. No. For the first time, Emily saw beyond the money. Beyond the CEO. Nathan Reynolds looked like a man who had spent years outrunning pain only to discover it traveled with him. The realization made him feel unexpectedly human, which frightened her more than power had. Because human connection was harder to defend against. 3 days later, everything fractured. Emily arrived at Lily's school to find the nurse unusually tense. She had an asthma episode during recess, the nurse explained. Emily's stomach dropped. Lily sat pale and exhausted beside the cot. The nurse continued carefully. "We managed it, but honestly." Emily braced herself. Her medication schedule has been inconsistent. Shame crashed through her instantly. Because it was true. She had stretched doses, cut corners, tried making expensive prescriptions last longer. Not because she didn't care. Because poverty forced impossible choices. Emily nodded numbly. "I know." The nurse softened slightly. "I'm not judging you. But she needs stability." Stability. The word felt cruel. As if stability were something purchased easily. That evening, Emily sat alone after Lily fell asleep. Bills spread around her again. The apartment radiator clanged loudly. Rainwater leaked slowly near the window. Her head hurt. Everything hurt. Her phone buzzed. "Nathan, you sound exhausted." Emily frowned. "How would you know that from text messages?" Long pause. Then, because exhausted people stop pretending they're fine. Something inside her cracked unexpectedly. Not dramatically. Quietly. Emily typed before reconsidering. I'm failing her. Nathan called immediately. She almost declined. Instead, she answered. Neither spoke initially. Finally, Nathan said softly, No. You're surviving impossible conditions. There's a difference. Emily pressed her hand against her mouth. Tears threatened suddenly. I missed a refill because rent increased, she whispered. Who misses medication refills for their kid? Nathan's voice remained painfully calm. Parents who don't have enough support. Emily shook her head, even though he couldn't see. People always say children come first, like love magically fixes economics. Silence. Then Nathan spoke quietly. My mother used to skip meals so we wouldn't notice empty cabinets. Emily closed her eyes. I swore I'd never become this person. What person? The kind always one emergency from collapse. Nathan inhaled slowly. Emily, most Americans are one emergency from collapse. Wealth just hides it from people like me until someone accidentally texts the truth to the wrong number. The honesty landed heavily. For several seconds, neither spoke. Then Nathan said something that changed everything. The warehouse where you work overnight belongs to Reynolds Logistics now, doesn't it? Emily froze. How do you know where I work? You mentioned inventory shifts before. Nathan's voice tightened. I checked internally. Alarm rose instantly. You investigated me? To understand the situation. That's not okay. I know. But Emily was already angry. Because poor people rarely own privacy. Employers, landlords, insurance companies. Everyone examined their lives. Nathan's voice lowered. Emily, the overnight productivity standards at that facility are dangerous. She laughed bitterly. You just noticed that? Silence. Then, no. Nathan admitted quietly. I noticed years ago and did nothing meaningful. The room suddenly felt too small. Emily stood pacing. So this is guilt management for you? You destroy people's lives and then rescue one woman at a time to feel better. Nathan absorbed the blow. Maybe I deserve that. You think because you're kind personally it erases what your company does? His voice roughened slightly for the first time. No. I think I'm trying to stop pretending distance removes responsibility. Emily breathed hard. Anger mixed painfully with understanding. Because at least he acknowledged harm. Most wealthy men never did. Nathan continued softly. You asked why I helped you. The truth is, you sounded like my mother before Caleb died. Exhausted. Cornered. Still apologizing for needing help. Emily leaned against the counter. Her anger weakened unexpectedly. Not because he defended himself. Because he sounded ashamed. Real shame. The kind that changed posture. Voice. Breathing. Finally she whispered. I don't know what to do with any of this. Nathan answered just as quietly. Neither do I. Winter arrived early that year. The city turned gray and wet. Heating bills climbed. Bus routes delayed constantly. Lily developed another cough. Emily fought exhaustion daily. But something subtle had shifted. Not magically. Nothing became easy. Yet Nathan remained present. Steady. He never tried buying affection. Never pushed beyond boundaries. Sometimes he simply listened. Sometimes he failed. One evening he sent expensive groceries unexpectedly. Emily became furious. I'm not your charity project. She snapped over the phone. Nathan sounded immediately regretful. You're right. I crossed a line. Again. No defensiveness. Still, she cried afterward. Because she hated how quickly relief followed anger. A week later, Nathan attended Lily's school winter concert after Emily casually mentioned no family plan to come. He stood awkwardly near the back, carrying hot chocolate for both of them. Lily spotted him immediately. Her entire face lit up. Emily's chest tightened painfully at the sight. Afterward, while parents gathered children beneath fluorescent hallway lights, Lily tugged Nathan's sleeve. Did you hear my solo? Nathan crouched slightly. You were brave up there. Lily grinned. I was scared first. Nathan nodded once. Most brave people are. Emily watched the exchange quietly. Nathan looked almost startled by his own gentleness. As if fatherhood had once been a possibility he lost somewhere. Walking home later through cold streets, Emily finally asked, Did you want children? Nathan's expression shifted. For several seconds, only traffic noise filled the silence. My wife was pregnant once, he said quietly. Emily stopped walking. Nathan kept his eyes ahead. We lost the baby at 16 weeks. Pain roughened his voice unexpectedly. I went back to work 2 days later because I didn't know how to stay inside grief without fixing something. Emily's chest ached. And your marriage? Nathan laughed softly without humor. collapsed slowly after that. They continued walking. Snow began falling lightly. Nathan finally said, "I think she needed me emotionally present. Instead, I became efficient." Emily looked at him carefully. "That sounds lonely." Nathan glanced at her. It was. The honesty between them had become dangerous now, because intimacy rarely started with romance. It started with recognition. Two wounded people slowly admitting the truth aloud. The crisis came in January. Emily's overnight warehouse shift ended at 5 in the morning. Freezing rain-coated roads. She had slept barely 3 hours total in 2 days. At 5:42 a.m., a pallet collapsed near loading dock 3. A coworker screamed. Emily turned too quickly. Pain exploded through her shoulder as heavy boxes slammed into her side. The world tilted. Voices blurred. Someone cursed. Another worker shouted for a supervisor. Emily tried standing. Failed. All she could think was, "Not the hospital. Please, not the hospital." Because injured people missed work. Missed work meant missed rent. The supervisor knelt nearby, looking irritated more than concerned. "Can you move your arm?" Emily bit back tears. "I think so." "Good. We'll file incident paperwork." Paperwork. Always paperwork. Hours later, after urgent care confirmed a shoulder sprain and possible ligament damage, Emily sat in the parking lot shaking from exhaustion. She couldn't lift Lily properly. Couldn't work diner shifts. Couldn't afford recovery. Her phone buzzed. "Nathan, how are you?" Emily stared at the screen for a long moment. Then finally typed, "I got hurt at work." He called immediately. This time she answered crying. Not dramatically, just exhausted tears. Nathan arrived 40 minutes later. Emily sat inside her car outside the apartment building because she couldn't stop shaking. Nathan opened the passenger door carefully. One look at her face changed his expression completely. "Jesus, Emily." Something about the raw concern in his voice broke her further. "I can't miss work," she whispered. "I literally can't." Nathan crouched beside the car. Rain soaked his coat. He didn't seem to notice. "Look at me," he said softly. Emily did. "You are injured because people at my company are pushed beyond safe limits." The words landed heavily. Nathan continued quietly. "I'm not letting you carry this alone." Emily laughed bitterly through tears. "That's easy for you to say." "No," he said. "Easy would be pretending this has nothing to do with me." Silence stretched. Then Emily whispered, "I'm scared all the time." Nathan's face changed. Not pity. Recognition again. "I know," he said. And somehow she believed him. The following weeks changed both of them. Nathan initiated internal investigations into warehouse conditions. Executives resisted immediately. Board members complained about cost implications. Nathan pushed anyway. For the first time in years, he stopped treating morality like public relations. The conflict became ugly. News outlets questioned restructuring decisions. Investors criticized him. One board member privately suggested he was becoming emotionally compromised. Nathan nearly laughed. Because maybe emotional compromise simply looked like basic humanity to people who spent too long insulated from consequences. Meanwhile, Emily struggled with accepting help. Nathan arranged temporary physical therapy. She resisted. They argued repeatedly. "You don't owe me your independence," Nathan said once, exhausted. Emily snapped back immediately. "Easy for rich people to say. Dependency destroys poor women." Nathan went silent, then nodded. Slowly. "That's fair." The conversation haunted him afterward. Because she was right. Money distorted power. Even kindness carried imbalance. So he adjusted. Instead of rescuing, he asked. Instead of deciding, he listened. Slowly, Emily noticed. One evening, Lily fell asleep during a movie at Nathan's apartment. It was the first time Emily had visited. The penthouse felt strangely empty. Beautiful. Cold. No photographs. No evidence of life beyond work. Nathan carried Lily carefully to the guest room couch. His movements remained hesitant, as if afraid tenderness might disappear if handled incorrectly. Emily watched quietly from the doorway. When Nathan returned, she asked softly, "Do you ever stop feeling guilty?" Nathan leaned against the kitchen counter. City lights reflected behind him. "No," he answered honestly. Emily studied him. "Then why keep trying?" Nathan looked genuinely surprised by the question. After a long silence, he said, "Because guilt should change behavior. Otherwise, it's just self-indulgence." The answer settled deep inside her. Not because it was poetic, because it sounded earned. Emily glanced around the enormous apartment. "This place feels lonely." Nathan laughed softly. It is lonely. She looked at him carefully. Why didn't you remarry? He considered before answering. Because eventually I realized my ex-wife didn't leave because I worked too much. Emily waited. She left because I stopped letting people need me emotionally. Work became easier than vulnerability. The honesty hurt to hear. Because Emily recognized pieces of herself too. Survival had hardened her. Exhaustion had narrowed her world into logistics. Medication, schedules, bills, fear. Nathan stepped closer slowly. Not touching, just present. You know what scared me most after Caleb died? He asked quietly. Emily shook her head. That I could continue functioning normally afterward. Something tightened in her chest. Grief changes people, she whispered. Nathan nodded. So does poverty. Neither moved. The city glowed outside enormous windows. Finally, Nathan said softly, I don't want to save you, Emily. She looked up sharply. Then what do you want? His expression turned painfully honest. I think I want to stop feeling alone in the world. The vulnerability in his voice undid her more than charm ever could. Emily stepped closer before fear could stop her. Their first kiss wasn't cinematic. It tasted like exhaustion, like grief, like two adults carefully discovering warmth after years of emotional winter. Nathan touched her face gently, almost uncertainly. Emily felt tears threaten unexpectedly. Not because everything was fixed. Nothing was fixed. Bills still existed. Her shoulder still hurt. Nathan still carried guilt heavy enough to reshape his life. But for the first time in years, Emily no longer felt invisible. And maybe that mattered more than rescue ever could. Spring arrived slowly. Lily's health stabilized. Emily accepted a remote accounting position Nathan had helped connect her with, but only after negotiating independently through formal channels. Nathan respected that. The warehouse investigation resulted in major policy changes. Not enough. Never enough. But some things improved. Mandatory rest periods. Safer scheduling. Transportation assistance after overnight shifts. Nathan lost investors over it. He accepted the loss quietly. One evening months later, Emily stood beside him at Lily's school science fair. Children ran through crowded hallways carrying cardboard volcanoes. Parents laughed tiredly. Normal life. Lily proudly demonstrated her astronomy project, while Nathan listened with complete seriousness. Emily watched them together. Warmth mixed painfully with fear. Because healing never erased uncertainty. Afterward, while Lily ran ahead toward the parking lot, Nathan slipped his hand into Emily's. Simple. Quiet. Real. Emily looked at him. You know this still scares me sometimes. Nathan nodded. Me too. I don't want Lily getting attached to something temporary. Pain flickered across his face. Neither do I. The honesty mattered. No promises. No fantasy declarations. Just truth. They walked slowly beneath soft evening light. Nathan finally said, I spent years believing competence mattered more than connection. Emily squeezed his hand lightly. And now? He looked toward Lily laughing ahead of them, then back at Emily. Now I think surviving alone isn't actually surviving. Emily felt something inside her soften carefully. Not completely. Some wounds stayed tender. Some fears remained. That was real life. But healing had begun quietly between them. Not through money. Not through rescue. Through honesty. Accountability. Presence. Two damaged adults colliding unexpectedly at the exact moment loneliness had nearly convinced both of them that connection no longer belonged to people like them. As Nathan opened the car door for Lily and she launched into another excited explanation about stars, Emily stood for one small moment beneath the fading light and allowed herself something she had not trusted in a very long time. Hope. Not perfect hope. Not fairy tale hope. Just the fragile, human kind. The kind built slowly. The kind earned. And for the first time in years, that felt enough.